The richest guests in the city looked on in silence. The billionaire's fiancée, with a venomous smile, pushed the young cleaner forward. "Our cleaner will cook for us tonight," she mocked. "Let's see what those dirty hands can do." As Keisha entered the kitchen, with tears of anger in her eyes, she didn't know that the meal she was about to prepare would not only save the night, but would destroy her boss and make her a millionaire. But before we dive into the full story, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's begin. You missed a spot. Amber Collins pointed at the bathroom floor with her perfectly manicured finger. "And use the special cleaner for the marble this time. I can still see water spots from yesterday." Keisha Williams nodded silently, her face calm despite the churning in her stomach. "Yes, Ms. Collins. I'll take care of it right away." "See that you do." Amber turned and walked out, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor she was so concerned about. Keisha watched her go, then reached for the special cleaner under the sink. This was her life now, scrubbing toilets in a mansion bigger than any place she had ever lived. The bathroom she was cleaning was the size of her entire apartment in Oakland. The morning had started like all others. Keisha woke up at 4:30 in the morning in the small apartment she shared with her mother. She moved quietly through the darkness, pausing at her mother's bedroom door. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm heading out now." Gloria Williams stirred slightly, her face thin and tired even in sleep. "Be safe, baby," she murmured. "I left your medicine on the nightstand with some water. The nurse will be here at 10. Keisha watched her mother nod before gently closing the door. On the bus to Pacific Heights, Keisha pulled out her phone and watched cooking videos. She paused on one showing how to make the perfect risotto, her fingers moving slightly as if stirring the rice. 3 years ago, she had been at the top of her class at the San Francisco Culinary Institute. Now she cleaned houses to pay for her mother's cancer treatments. When she arrived at the Sterling mansion, Keisha entered through the service entrance in the back. Marcus Johnson, the head server who had worked for Robert Sterling for 10 years, was already in the staff kitchen drinking coffee. "Morning, Keisha," he said, sliding a cup toward her. "Morning, Marcus." She took the coffee gratefully. "Thanks." "Amber's on the warpath today," he warned. "Something about her social media numbers dropping?" Keisha sighed. "Great. Just what I needed." After changing into her gray uniform, Keisha began her daily routine. She moved through the massive house like a ghost, dusting, vacuuming, and scrubbing while the wealthy inhabitants barely noticed her presence. She cleaned 15 rooms, taking special care with Robert Sterling's office and Amber's enormous walk-in closet. Mr. Sterling passed her in the hallway around noon. He was a tall man with silver-gray hair, always dressed in expensive suits. He nodded politely but said nothing. In 3 years, they had never had a real conversation. During her lunch break, Keisha sat in the small staff room and called the hospital. "Hello, I'm calling about Gloria Williams," she said. "I wanted to confirm her appointment for tomorrow." "Yes, Ms. Williams is scheduled for treatment at 9 in the morning, the receptionist replied. "And has the insurance approved the new medication Dr. Martinez recommended?" Keisha asked, holding her breath. "I'm sorry, but it's still pending approval. The doctor is trying to make a case for it." Keisha closed her eyes. "Okay, thank you." After her break, she continued cleaning the second floor when Amber found her. "I need you to redo my entire closet," Amber said, not bothering with a greeting. "The shoes aren't arranged by color and designer like I asked." "I organized them exactly how you requested yesterday," Keisha replied. "Well, it's wrong now," Amber snapped. "Fix it before you leave today." As she reorganized the hundreds of shoes that probably cost more than her yearly salary, Keisha's mind drifted back to culinary school. Chef Patterson had pulled her aside after class one day. "Williams, that sauce you made today was perfect," he had said. "You have a gift. I'm recommending you for the summer internship at Maison." That had been just before her mother's diagnosis, before the medical bills started piling up, before she had to choose between her dreams and her mother's life. Just as Keisha finished with the closet, she heard excited voices downstairs. She made her way to the main floor where the household staff was gathered. Robert Sterling stood in the center of the group. "As you all know, I'm hosting the Future of Tech charity dinner this Friday," he announced. "We'll have 100 of Silicon Valley's most important people here to raise money for underprivileged youth in tech education. I expect everything to be perfect." The event planner, a nervous woman named Tina, stepped forward with a tablet. "We have Chef Bennett from Lumiere confirmed. He's preparing a 6-course meal featuring sustainable seafood." The staff dispersed to begin preparations. Keisha continued with her regular duties, cleaning around the growing activity. By Thursday afternoon, the house was transformed with flowers, decorations, and extra furniture. Keisha was polishing silverware when Tina burst into the room, her face pale. "Chef Bennett has food poisoning," she announced to the kitchen staff. "He just called. He can't even stand up, let alone cook for 100 people tonight." The kitchen erupted in panic. "Can we get someone else?" the sous chef asked. "On 5 hours' notice? For 100 people?" Tina looked like she might faint. "Every top chef in the city is already booked. Mr. Sterling is going to fire all of us." Keisha slipped away during the chaos, retreating to the small staff kitchen. She opened the refrigerator and pulled out the container of spiced chicken and rice she had prepared the night before. As she heated it up, the kitchen filled with the aroma of garlic, cumin, and saffron. She was just sitting down to eat when the door swung open. Amber Collins stood there, her blue eyes widening as she sniffed the air. She looked at Keisha, then at the food, a calculating expression crossing her face. "What is that smell?" she demanded. "Just my lunch, Ms. Collins," Keisha replied. "You made this?" Amber stepped closer, examining the food. "Yes, it's my grandmother's recipe." A slow, malicious smile spread across Amber's perfect face. She grabbed Keisha's arm, pulling her up from the chair. "Come with me," she ordered, dragging Keisha out of the staff kitchen. "Ms. Collins, I need to finish my work." "Shut up and walk," Amber hissed, her grip tightening. Amber pulled Keisha through the house to the main dining room where early guests were already gathering. Robert Sterling was speaking with James Peterson, a famous food critic, when Amber interrupted them. "Robert, darling, I have the perfect solution to our little problem," she announced loudly. The room grew quiet as people turned to look at Amber and the uniformed maid she was gripping by the arm. Keisha felt her face burn with humiliation as the wealthy guests stared at her. "Everyone," Amber called out, her voice carrying across the silent room. "Tonight, we have a special surprise. Our cleaner thinks she can cook. Let's see what those dirty hands can do instead of just scrubbing toilets." The silence deepened. Robert Sterling looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. James Peterson raised an eyebrow, studying Keisha with cold, evaluating eyes. Keisha stood frozen in her gray uniform, feeling the weight of 100 judgmental stares. Her past as a promising culinary student and her present as an invisible cleaner collided in this moment of public humiliation. But as she looked around the room at the pitying faces, something hardened inside her. This was her chance, possibly her only chance, to cook again, to be seen again. "I'll do it," she said quietly, then louder. "I'll cook for everyone tonight." The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Amber's smile faltered slightly. "Are you sure, my dear?" James Peterson asked, his voice carrying the weight of his reputation. "This is quite a challenge for someone who cleans for a living." "I'm sure," Keisha replied, straightening her shoulders. "I was trained at the San Francisco Culinary Institute." She turned and walked toward the kitchen, her heart pounding. Behind her, she heard Amber's laugh. "This will be a disaster," Amber said to the guests, "but at least it will make a funny story later." As Keisha pushed through the kitchen doors, the professional staff looked up with doubt clear on their faces. She had 3 hours to create a meal worthy of 100 of the most powerful people in Silicon Valley. Marcus followed her into the kitchen. "Keisha, you don't have to do this. She's just trying to humiliate you." Keisha tied an apron around her waist and looked around the kitchen, a kitchen that would now be her battlefield. "No, Marcus. She's trying to humiliate me, but instead, she just gave me a chance." The silence in the dining room was deafening as Keisha stood tall despite the humiliation. She walked toward the kitchen with purpose, pushing through the swinging doors. The professional kitchen staff looked up from their stations, their faces showing doubt and confusion. "What's going on?" asked the sous chef, a young man named Tony. "I'm cooking dinner tonight," Keisha said, her voice steadier than she felt. "You're the cleaner," Tony said, frowning. "I was a student at the San Francisco Culinary Institute before I had to drop out," Keisha replied as she looked around the kitchen. "And now I need to make dinner for 100 people in less than 4 hours." Marcus pushed through the doors behind her. He pulled Keisha aside, his face serious. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "She's just trying to humiliate you. I can tell Mr. Sterling you're not feeling well." Keisha shook her head. "No, Marcus. This is my chance to cook again. Really cook. I haven't had that opportunity in 3 years." Marcus studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, then I'm helping you. What do you need?" "First, I need to call someone," Keisha said, pulling out her phone. She dialed a number she still knew by heart. After 3 rings, a gruff voice answered. "Patterson speaking." "Chef Patterson." "Chef. It's Keisha Williams." There was a pause. "Williams? The student who dropped out 3 years ago?" "Yes, sir. I need your help. I have to cook a 3-course meal for 100 people in 4 hours." Chef Patterson laughed. "Is this a joke?" "No, sir. I'm serious. I work as a cleaner for Robert Sterling, and their chef canceled with food poisoning. I've been asked to cook instead." "Robert Sterling? The tech billionaire?" Chef Patterson's voice changed. "Williams, you were one of my most talented students. What do you have to work with?" Keisha quickly described the kitchen and available ingredients as Marcus began checking the refrigerators and pantry. "Listen carefully," Chef Patterson said. "Keep it simple but elegant. Don't try anything too complicated with that time constraint. Focus on technique and flavor. Call me back if you hit any problems." "Thank you, Chef," Keisha said before hanging up. Outside in the dining room, Amber moved between the early guests with a glass of champagne in her hand. "It's going to be a disaster," she told a small group of well-dressed women, "but Robert insisted we give the help a chance. We'll probably end up ordering pizza." The women laughed politely. Back in the kitchen, Keisha tied on a clean apron and pulled her hair back tightly. "Tony, do you have an inventory of what's available?" she asked the sous chef. He hesitated, then handed her a tablet. "Everything Chef Bennett ordered is here. We were prepping for his menu when he called in sick." Keisha scrolled through the list. "Perfect. There's enough here to make something special." She quickly wrote down a 3-course menu: mushroom consommé with fresh herbs for the first course, seared halibut with saffron beurre blanc for the main, and chocolate soufflé with raspberry coulis for dessert. As she worked, memories of her grandmother's kitchen filled her mind. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice. "The secret to a good soup is patience, Keisha. Let the flavors build slowly." Keisha had spent countless Sundays in that small kitchen in Oakland, learning recipes passed down through generations. Those lessons had been her foundation before culinary school added technique and precision. "Marcus, I need serving bowls for 100 people. Do we have enough?" Keisha asked as she began chopping mushrooms. "I'll check," he replied, hurrying to the storage room. The kitchen staff watched Keisha with uncertainty, but as she continued to work with confidence, they slowly began to follow her lead. Outside, a car pulled up to the mansion. Emily Chen, Robert Sterling's 32-year-old business partner, arrived early for the dinner. She was greeted at the door by Tina, the event planner, who looked stressed. "Ms. Chen, welcome," Tina said. There's been a slight change in tonight's plans." "Oh?" Emily raised an eyebrow. Tina explained the situation in a hushed voice. Emily's expression changed from surprise to interest. "Where is this cleaner-turned-chef now?" she asked. "In the kitchen," Tina replied. Emily made her way to the kitchen, pausing at the door to observe. She watched as Keisha directed the staff with calm authority, her hands moving with precise skill as she prepared ingredients. Emily pushed through the door. "Excuse me," she said. Keisha looked up, immediately recognizing Robert Sterling's business partner from photos in the house. "Ms. Chen," she said, wiping her hands on her apron, "I'm sorry about the change in plans." Emily smiled. "Don't be. I'm Emily. And you are?" "Keisha Williams. Tina told me what happened. That was quite a move by Amber." Keisha nodded but said nothing. "Need any help?" Emily asked. "You want to help me cook?" Keisha asked, surprised. Emily laughed. "I'm terrible in the kitchen. But I grew up in Oakland too. My parents ran a small restaurant. I respect anyone who can cook under pressure." "How did you know I'm from Oakland?" "Robert keeps files on all his staff. I remember seeing yours." Emily glanced around the kitchen. "What can I do to help?" "Could you keep Amber out of the kitchen?" Keisha asked. "Consider it done," Emily replied with a smile. As Emily left, Marcus returned with concerning news. "Some ingredients are missing," he said quietly. "The saffron, fresh vanilla beans, and half the chocolate that was delivered this morning." Keisha frowned. "That's strange. Those are exactly the things I need for my menu." "I saw Amber in the pantry earlier," one of the kitchen assistants said hesitantly. "She was putting something in her purse." Marcus's face darkened. "I'll be right back." He returned 15 minutes later with a small bag. "Found these in Amber's bathroom. She hid them in her makeup drawer." Keisha took the bag containing the missing ingredients. "Thank you, Marcus." "She's trying to make you fail," he said. "I know, but she won't succeed," Keisha replied, returning to her work. As the afternoon progressed, Keisha's confidence grew. The consommé was simmering, perfectly clear and aromatic. The fish was prepped and ready for cooking. The soufflé bases were prepared and waiting to be baked at the last minute. More guests began to arrive. Through the kitchen doors, Keisha could see Robert Sterling greeting people in the main hall. She spotted James Peterson, the famous food critic, among them. "That's James Peterson," Tony whispered to Keisha. "He destroyed Chef Morales' career last year with one review." "Thank you for that helpful information," Keisha said, her stomach tightening. At 6:30 in the evening, just 30 minutes before dinner was scheduled to be served, the kitchen door swung open. Amber walked in, her blue eyes cold as she surveyed the busy kitchen. "How quaint," she said, looking at Keisha. "Playing chef for the night. Is there something you need, Ms. Collins?" Keisha asked politely. Amber stepped closer, lowering her voice so only Keisha could hear. "When this fails, you'll be fired, and I'll make sure you never work in this city again." Keisha looked directly into Amber's eyes. "Dinner will be served in 30 minutes, Ms. Collins. You should join your guests." Amber's smile tightened. "Enjoy your moment while it lasts." She turned and left the kitchen. Keisha took a deep breath and turned to her team. "Let's begin plating the first course." As the waiters lined up to collect the elegant bowls of mushroom consommé, Keisha's hands trembled slightly. The aroma rising from the delicate soup told her it was perfect, but she knew the real judgment would come from the dining room. "First course is going out," Marcus announced as the waiters began to move. Keisha watched through the small window in the kitchen door as the first plates were set before the waiting guests. Everything she had worked for, her future, her mother's care, her dignity, now depended on what happened when those spoons lifted to 100 waiting mouths. Marcus stood beside Keisha at the kitchen door, both of them watching as the waiters served the mushroom consommé to the waiting guests. The dining room fell completely silent as the last bowl was placed on the table. "They're waiting for James Peterson to try it first," Marcus whispered. "No one will touch their spoon until he does." Keisha held her breath as she watched the famous food critic lift his spoon. His face showed no emotion as the soup touched his lips. Then his eyes closed briefly, and the smallest smile appeared on his face. Across the room, other guests began to taste their soup. Soft murmurs of approval spread through the dining room. "They like it," Marcus said, squeezing Keisha's shoulder. Amber stood near the center of the room, her smile freezing as she heard the positive comments around her. She had been in the middle of telling a guest about finding the help to cook when the woman interrupted her. "This soup is amazing," the guest said. "It's so clear, yet so flavorful." Amber's face tightened. "It's just soup." From her position at the kitchen door, Keisha noticed Emily Chen sitting at a table near the window. Emily caught her eye and gave a subtle thumbs up. "Back to work," Keisha said, turning away from the door. "We need to start on the main course." The kitchen staff moved with new energy. The success of the first course had changed the atmosphere completely. "Tony, start the beurre blanc sauce," Keisha directed. "Make sure the butter is cold when you add it." "Yes, chef," Tony replied automatically, then looked surprised at his own response. Keisha smiled as she checked the halibut fillets. They were perfect, fresh and firm. She would need to time the cooking precisely to serve 100 people at once. "We'll sear the fish in batches of 20, she explained to the staff. "Each batch takes exactly 4 minutes. We'll keep them warm in the low oven until serving." As Keisha demonstrated the proper searing technique for the first batch, the kitchen door opened. Robert Sterling stepped in quietly, watching from the corner. No one noticed him at first as they were focused on Keisha's instructions. "The key is not to move the fish," she was saying. "Let it form a golden crust before you flip it." Robert observed the scene with interest. The woman in the cleaner's uniform was completely transformed. Her movements were precise and confident. The kitchen staff, who had worked for him for years, were following her directions without question. Keisha looked up and saw him. "Mr. Sterling," she said, straightening. "Please continue," he said. "I just wanted to see what was happening in my kitchen." "The first course was received well?" she asked. "Very well," he replied. "James Peterson asked who trained you." Keisha turned back to the stove. "I need to focus on the fish now, if you don't mind." Robert nodded and continued to watch silently. In the dining room, waiters were clearing the first course. Marcus supervised as they brought the empty bowls back to the kitchen. "Every bowl is clean," he reported to Keisha. "Not a drop left." Keisha nodded, focused on the task at hand. "Start warming the plates for the main course." As the kitchen activity increased, a problem arose. One of the staff called out in alarm. "Chef, the oven temperature is dropping." Keisha checked the display. The oven where the first batches of fish were being kept warm had fallen from 150 degrees to 110 degrees. "What happened?" she asked. "I don't know. It was fine a minute ago." Keisha opened the oven door. The heat that should have greeted her was barely there. The fish inside would get cold quickly. "We need to adapt," she said calmly. "Tony, turn on all the burners on the second stove. We'll have to keep the fish warm in pans instead." "There's not enough space," Tony said. "There is if we stack them carefully with parchment paper between layers," Keisha replied. "Marcus, check if someone adjusted the oven settings." Marcus walked to the oven control panel and examined it. "Someone turned it down manually," he said. The digital lock was disabled. Keisha and Robert exchanged a look. Neither needed to say Amber's name out loud. "Can you fix it?" Keisha asked. "Already done?" Marcus replied, resetting the controls. "But it will take time to heat up again." "We don't have time," Keisha said. "We'll use the stovetop method." Robert stepped forward. "What do you need?" Keisha looked at him in surprise. "Parchment paper, more pans, and another pair of hands." "Tell me what to do," he said, rolling up his expensive shirt sleeves. In the dining room, Amber approached a group of waiters preparing to serve the main course. "The fish needs to rest before serving," she told them with authority. "Wait at least 15 minutes after it comes out of the kitchen." The head waiter frowned. "That's not standard procedure, Ms. Collins. The chef would have told us if—" "Are you questioning me?" Amber interrupted. "This is my fiancé's house. Do as I say." The waiter nodded reluctantly. "Yes, Ms. Collins." Emily Chen, who had been passing by on her way to the restroom, overheard the exchange. She waited until Amber walked away before approaching the waiters. "I believe Ms. Collins is mistaken," Emily said. "Fish is best served immediately. Please follow the chef's timing, not Ms. Collins's suggestions." The waiters looked relieved. "Yes, Ms. Chen." Back in the kitchen, Keisha, Robert, and the staff had managed to keep all the fish warm using the stovetop method. The sauce was perfect and the vegetables were ready. "We're back on schedule," Keisha announced. "Let's plate." Robert stepped back, watching as Keisha directed the plating process. Each dish looked identical. The golden halibut positioned perfectly atop the vibrant vegetables, the saffron beurre blanc creating a delicate pool around the fish. "It's beautiful," Robert said quietly. Keisha gave him a quick smile before returning to her work. "Marcus, are the waiters ready?" "They're lined up outside," Marcus replied. "But there seems to be some confusion. Amber told them to wait 15 minutes before serving." "What?" Keisha looked alarmed. "The fish will be cold and the sauce will break." "Emily fixed it," Marcus assured her. "They'll serve immediately." Keisha nodded her thanks. "Send them in." The waiters entered in a synchronized line, each taking 2 plates at a time. Keisha watched as they filed out, carrying her creation to the dining room. "Go watch their reactions," Tony urged her. "You deserve to see this." Keisha hesitated, then moved to the kitchen door. Through the small window, she could see the waiters placing the main course in front of the guests. Again, James Peterson was the focus of attention as he cut into his fish and took the first bite. This time, his reaction was more visible. He looked up and scanned the room until he found Robert Sterling. He gave a small nod of approval. Around the room, expressions of delight appeared on faces as people tasted the dish. Conversations paused as guests focused on their food. Amber stood near the bar, her face tight with anger as she watched the positive reactions. She caught Keisha's eye through the kitchen door and glared at her. Emily Chen raised her glass in Keisha's direction, smiling broadly. Robert came to stand beside Keisha at the door. "You've impressed everyone," he said, "including me." "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," Keisha replied, "but we still have dessert to go." "You're not worried about the soufflés?" he asked. "That's the real test," Keisha admitted. 100 soufflés all rising perfectly at the same time. It's ambitious. "Based on what I've seen so far, I believe you can do it," Robert said. Keisha turned back to the kitchen. "The empty plates will be coming back soon. We need to prepare for the final course." As she predicted, the main course plates began returning to the kitchen, all of them nearly empty. "They loved it," Marcus reported. Keisha nodded, already focused on the soufflés. "Preheat all ovens to 400 degrees. Check that they're actually heating this time. We have exactly 25 minutes to prepare 100 perfect chocolate soufflés." The kitchen team moved with practiced coordination now, following Keisha's instructions without hesitation. Even Tony, who had doubted her at first, now treated her with respect. "The raspberry coulis is ready," one of the staff reported. "Perfect," Keisha said. "Now we need to fill the ramekins and get them in the ovens." As they worked, Keisha felt a calm confidence replace her earlier anxiety. The dinner was going well, better than she had dared to hope. For the first time in 3 years, she felt like herself again. Not a cleaner, not someone invisible, but a chef creating food that brought joy to people. But as she filled the last ramekin with the chocolate mixture, Keisha knew the most challenging part was still ahead. Soufflés were notoriously difficult. They had to be perfectly timed, and even the slightest problem could cause them to fall. All of her success so far could be undone if the dessert failed. Keisha carefully placed the first tray of soufflés in the oven and set the timer. 20 minutes exactly, she said. Not 1 second more. The timer was set and all eyes in the kitchen were on the ovens. Keisha watched through the small glass window as the first batch of soufflés began to rise. Behind her, the kitchen staff worked silently, respecting the delicate moment. "They're rising perfectly," Tony whispered. In the dining room, conversation had grown louder as guests discussed the impressive main course. James Peterson was writing notes in a small black book, occasionally looking toward the kitchen doors. Emily Chen moved between tables, stopping to chat with various tech executives. "The chef tonight is extraordinary," she told the CEO of a major software company. "She normally works as a cleaner here, but she trained at the San Francisco Culinary Institute." "A cleaner?" the woman asked, surprised. "This is restaurant-quality food." "Exactly," Emily nodded. "She had to leave culinary school to care for her sick mother. Tonight is the first time she's cooked professionally in 3 years." Similar conversations were happening throughout the room. The story of the cleaner-turned-chef was spreading, creating an atmosphere of curiosity and anticipation for the final course. Robert Sterling moved through the crowd, accepting compliments about the meal. He noticed Amber standing alone near the bar, her face tense as she watched the positive reactions. "The halibut was perfectly cooked," he said as he approached her. "Everyone is impressed." "It was adequate," Amber replied coldly. "Let's see if she can manage dessert. Soufflés are notoriously difficult." "You seem disappointed by her success," Robert observed. Amber's eyes narrowed. "I'm concerned about our reputation. We promised these people a celebrity chef, not the cleaning lady." Before Robert could respond, Amber excused herself. "I need to use the restroom." Instead of heading to the bathroom, Amber slipped toward the kitchen. She waited until no one was looking, then pushed through the door. In the kitchen, Keisha was directing the preparation of the final batches of soufflés. "These need to go in now," she said to one of the assistants. "The timing must be perfect, so they all come out at the same time." As the assistant turned with the tray of filled ramekins, Amber deliberately bumped into him. "Oh!" she exclaimed as the tray tilted and 6 ramekins crashed to the floor. The kitchen froze. Chocolate mixture spread across the floor and broken ceramic pieces scattered everywhere. "I'm so sorry," Amber said with fake concern. "I just wanted to check on progress." Keisha looked at the mess, then at the clock. She had planned the timing perfectly, but now she was 6 soufflés short. "It's okay," she told the assistant, who looked close to tears. "Accidents happen. Let's clean this up quickly." As the staff rushed to clean the floor, Keisha's mind raced. She needed 6 more soufflés, but there wasn't enough time to make more batter from scratch. A memory flashed in her mind, her grandmother's kitchen in Oakland many years ago. She had dropped a cake just before a family gathering. "When you don't have time to start over, you improvise," her grandmother had said. "Sometimes the best creations come from necessity." "Marcus," Keisha called, "do we have any chocolate left?" "Just a small amount," he replied. "Not enough for 6 more soufflés." "What about fresh berries? More raspberries, strawberries, anything?" "Yes, plenty in the walk-in." "Get them, please, and 6 wide, shallow ramekins if we have them." While Marcus gathered the items, Keisha checked on the soufflés in the ovens. They were rising beautifully, their tops puffing above the rims of the ramekins. When Marcus returned, Keisha quickly melted the remaining chocolate and mixed it with the leftover raspberry coulis. "We're making chocolate berry cups," she explained as she worked. "They'll be different from the soufflés but still delicious." The staff watched in amazement as Keisha created 6 elegant desserts in minutes. She arranged fresh berries in the shallow dishes, poured the warm chocolate raspberry mixture over them, and added a small quenelle of cream on top. "These will go to the head table," she said. "Mr. Sterling, Ms. Chen, Mr. Peterson, and the other VIP guests." While Keisha was busy solving the dessert crisis, Amber had slipped to the back of the kitchen. She moved quietly to the oven controls and turned the temperature dials up, increasing the heat from 400 degrees to 450 degrees. "This should ruin them," she whispered to herself with a smile. Marcus, who had been watching Amber since she entered the kitchen, saw what she did. He walked quickly to the ovens. "Ms. Collins," he said loudly, "is there something wrong with the oven settings?" Amber spun around, her face flushing. "I was just checking them." "By turning up the temperature during a critical baking process?" Marcus asked. Keisha looked up from her work, noticing the confrontation. She moved to the ovens and saw the changed settings. "The temperature's been increased," she said. "The soufflés will overcook and collapse." She quickly adjusted the dials back to the correct temperature, hoping it wasn't too late. At that moment, Robert Sterling walked into the kitchen. He had become concerned when Amber didn't return from her supposed bathroom trip. "What's happening here?" he asked, taking in the scene. Marcus confronting Amber by the ovens, Keisha frantically checking the soufflés through the oven windows. "Your fiancé just turned up the oven temperature while our soufflés were baking," Marcus said bluntly. "I did no such thing," Amber protested. "I was just looking." "I saw you turn the dials, Ms. Collins," Marcus insisted. Robert looked at Amber with new eyes. "Is this true?" "Of course not," Amber said, her voice rising. "Why would I do that? This whole kitchen staff is against me because I'm an outsider." Robert turned to Keisha. "Can the desserts be saved?" Keisha checked the ovens again. "I think so. I caught it quickly. But we need to take them out now slightly early before they overcook." "Do it," Robert said. He then turned to Amber. "We'll discuss this later." Amber's face hardened. She walked out of the kitchen without another word, letting the door swing shut behind her. The kitchen team moved quickly, opening oven doors and carefully removing the soufflés. Despite the temperature change, most of them had survived, their tops golden and puffed. "They look perfect," Tony said with relief. "We got lucky," Keisha replied. "Let's plate them quickly before they fall." The staff worked with precision, placing each soufflé on a dessert plate and adding a small pitcher of raspberry coulis on the side. "The special berry cups go to table 1, Keisha reminded them. "Make sure Mr. Peterson gets one." As the desserts were plated, Robert Sterling remained in the kitchen watching Keisha work. Her calm under pressure, her creativity in crisis, and her leadership had impressed him deeply. "Ms. Williams," he said as the waiters began to line up for service, "I owe you an apology." Keisha looked up in surprise. "Sir?" "I've had you cleaning my house for 3 years, and I never bothered to learn anything about you, about your talents or your situation." Keisha continued working as they talked. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Sterling. I'm doing my job." "Tonight, you've done far more than your job," Robert said. "And I suspect my fiancé intended this evening to humiliate you, not showcase your abilities." Before Keisha could respond, Marcus called out, "Desserts are ready to go!" The waiters entered and began taking the plates. Each soufflé was still perfectly risen, a testament to Keisha's skill and quick thinking. "I'm going back to the dining room," Robert said. "But this conversation isn't over." As he left, Keisha took a deep breath. For the first time, she allowed herself to think beyond this night, beyond her role as a cleaner. If the dessert was well received, what might that mean for her future? Through the kitchen door, she watched as the waiters served the soufflés. James Peterson received one of the special chocolate berry cups. He looked at it with interest, clearly noting that it was different from what others received. The room fell silent once again as guests dipped their spoons into the delicate desserts. Then, as if by magic, a wave of delight spread across the room. People smiled, nodded, and murmured to their tablemates. James Peterson closed his eyes as he tasted his dessert. When he opened them, he looked directly toward the kitchen. His expression was no longer critical but appreciative. Across the room, Amber stood near the exit, her face a mask of anger as she watched her plan fail completely. Emily Chen raised her glass toward the kitchen in a silent toast. "They love it," Marcus said, standing beside Keisha at the door. "You did it. All 3 courses." "We did it," Keisha corrected him. "I couldn't have done this alone." As the reality of her success began to sink in, Keisha's thoughts turned to her mother. What would Gloria say when she told her about tonight? For the first time in 3 years, she had a story about cooking to share, not just about cleaning. In the dining room, James Peterson stood up and tapped his glass with a spoon. The room quieted as everyone turned to look at him. "I believe," he said in his deep, authoritative voice, "that we should acknowledge the chef responsible for this remarkable meal." The entire dining room fell silent as James Peterson continued to speak. "In 30 years as a food critic, I rarely encounter true talent," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet room. "Tonight I have experienced food with not just skill, but soul." The room erupted in applause. People turned toward the kitchen, curious to see the chef who had created such an impressive meal. Robert Sterling moved to the center of the room, raising his hand to quiet the guests. "I believe we should meet the person responsible for tonight's remarkable dinner," he said. "But first I must share something with you all." The room quieted again, all eyes on Robert. "Many of you were here earlier when my fiancée, Amber, announced that our cleaner would be cooking dinner," Robert continued. "What you may not know is that this was intended as a humiliation, not an opportunity." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Amber, still standing near the exit, stepped forward. "Robert, what are you doing?" she hissed. Robert ignored her. "The chef who created your meal tonight was indeed working as a cleaner in my home, but before that, she was a top student at the San Francisco Culinary Institute, forced to abandon her training when her mother became ill." More murmurs filled the room, this time with a different tone. "Despite attempts to sabotage her efforts tonight," Robert continued, looking directly at Amber, "she has created one of the finest meals I have ever experienced. I believe it's time we meet her properly." Robert walked to the kitchen door and opened it wide. "Ms. Williams, would you please join us?" Inside the kitchen, Keisha froze. Marcus gently pushed her forward. "Go on," he said softly. "You earned this." Keisha wiped her hands on her apron and walked through the door. The bright lights of the dining room momentarily blinded her. As her eyes adjusted, she saw 100 faces turned toward her, many showing surprise when they realized she was still wearing her cleaner's uniform beneath a borrowed chef's apron. The room was silent for a moment, then burst into applause. People stood from their seats, creating a standing ovation that echoed through the mansion. Robert guided Keisha to the center of the room. She stood tall despite her racing heart, her eyes moving across the crowd of wealthy and powerful people who just hours ago wouldn't have noticed her existence. "This is Keisha Williams," Robert announced, "the extraordinary chef who created your meal tonight." James Peterson approached them, his normally stern face now open and smiling. "Ms. Williams," he said, extending his hand, "that was a remarkable achievement. The halibut was perfect, but those soufflés, even with the sabotage attempt, were nothing short of masterful." "Thank you, Mr. Peterson," Keisha replied, shaking his hand. "I'm curious," Peterson continued. "That special dessert you sent to our table, the one that was different from the others. What prompted that creation?" Keisha hesitated, not wanting to explain the dropped ramekins and Amber's interference. "It was a last-minute inspiration," she said diplomatically. "I wanted to offer something special for the head table." Peterson smiled, clearly understanding there was more to the story. "Improvisation is the mark of a true chef," he said. And speaking of true chefs, he turned to address the room. "What many of you don't know is that I'm not just a food critic. For the past year, I've been developing a restaurant incubator program to discover and support undiscovered culinary talent." The room grew quiet again as everyone listened intently. "We provide funding, mentorship, and a platform for chefs who haven't had traditional opportunities," Peterson explained. "Ms. Williams, I would like you to be our first participant." Gasps and excited murmurs filled the room. Keisha stood frozen, unable to believe what she was hearing. I don't know what to say," she managed. "Say yes," Emily Chen called from her table, smiling broadly. "We're offering $500,000 in startup funding," Peterson continued, "plus mentorship from established restaurateurs and chefs." Keisha's mind raced. $500,000. Enough to start her own restaurant. Enough to get her mother better medical care. Enough to change everything. From the side of the room, Amber suddenly pushed forward, her face twisted with anger. "Wait just a minute," she said loudly. "This is ridiculous. You're all being fooled." The room turned to look at her. "She stole my grandmother's recipes," Amber declared, pointing at Keisha. "I recognized them immediately. The mushroom soup, the fish sauce, they're all from my family cookbook." A shocked silence fell over the room. Keisha stared at Amber in disbelief. "That's not true," Keisha said firmly. "Every dish I made tonight came from my own training and experience." "Prove it," Amber challenged. "Explain how you made them." Keisha took a deep breath, then began to explain in detail. The consommé started with roasted mushrooms, cremini, shiitake, and oyster to develop deep flavor. Then I created a clarified broth using egg whites to remove impurities, a classic French technique I learned at culinary school. As she continued explaining each dish, including specific techniques and ingredient combinations, the guests listened with interest. Many nodded in appreciation of her knowledge. The soufflé base is a chocolate pastry cream folded with beaten egg whites, Keisha concluded. The raspberry coulis is simply fresh berries cooked down with a touch of sugar and lemon juice. These are fundamental culinary techniques, not stolen recipes. James Peterson nodded. As someone who has tasted thousands of dishes in my career, I can confirm these are classic preparations executed with exceptional skill, not copied recipes. Amber's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "She's lying. She's just a cleaner." Robert stepped forward, his expression stern. "Amber, that's enough." He turned to address his guests. "I built my company by recognizing genuine talent and character. Tonight has been revealing in many ways." He looked at Amber with disappointment. Some people tried to humiliate someone they thought was beneath them, but instead revealed their own cruelty. He turned to Keisha. "And others showed resilience and extraordinary skill under pressure, the qualities I value most." Amber stormed out of the room, pushing past servers at the door. The guests watched her go, then turned their attention back to Keisha. "Ms. Williams," James Peterson said, "my offer stands. Would you be interested in becoming the first chef in our incubator program?" Before Keisha could answer, Robert Sterling spoke up. "I'd like to add to Mr. Peterson's offer. I would be honored to provide additional investment and help you secure the perfect location in San Francisco." Emily Chen stood and approached them. "And I'd be happy to serve as your business mentor, Keisha. Every great chef needs someone to help with the business side of things." Keisha looked at the three successful people standing before her, offering to change her life. Just hours ago, she had been invisible to them, just another person who cleaned and served. Now they were looking at her with respect, as an equal. "I don't know what to say," Keisha said, emotion tightening her throat. "Say yes," Marcus called from the kitchen doorway where the staff had gathered to watch. Keisha smiled. "Yes, yes to all of it." The room burst into applause again. Guests came forward to congratulate her, many handing her business cards and offering connections. As the excitement continued around her, Keisha found a quiet moment to step aside. She pulled out her phone and dialed her mother's number. "Mom?" she said when Gloria answered. "You won't believe what just happened." She quickly told her mother about the evening, tears forming in her eyes as she described the opportunities that had suddenly appeared. "I'm so proud of you, baby," Gloria said, her voice weak but full of joy. "I always knew you were meant to cook, not clean." "With this money, we can get you better treatments," Keisha said. "Maybe even try that experimental therapy doctor," Martinez mentioned. Keisha, Robert Sterling's voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see him standing nearby. "There's someone else who would like to meet you." He gestured to a small, elegant woman in her 60s who stood waiting patiently. "This is my mother, Elizabeth Sterling," Robert said. "She rarely attends these events, but she insisted on meeting you." Elizabeth Sterling took Keisha's hands in hers. "My dear, that was the finest meal I've had in many years, and I've dined at the best restaurants in the world." "Thank you, Mrs. Sterling," Keisha replied. "Call me Elizabeth," the older woman said. "And I have a request. My son tells me you need to leave this job to pursue your new opportunity. But before you go, would you consider teaching my personal chef how to make that chocolate souffle? It was divine." Keisha laughed, the tension of the evening finally breaking. "I would be happy to." As the party began to wind down, Keisha found herself standing with James Peterson, Robert Sterling, and Emily Chen, discussing plans for her future restaurant. "What will you call it?" Emily asked. Keisha thought for a moment. "Homecoming," she said finally, "because good food should make you feel like you've come home." James nodded in approval. "Perfect. Now, let's talk about next steps. I believe we have a chef's agreement to draft and a restaurant to build." The morning light streamed through the windows of Keisha's small apartment as she sat at her kitchen table, staring at the resignation letter she had just written. It had been 3 days since the dinner at Sterling's mansion, and her life had already begun to change. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus. "Mr. Sterling wants to know when you're coming in today." Keisha typed back, 9 o'clock. I have something to give him." She folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. Though James Peterson, Robert Sterling, and Emily Chen had made incredible offers, Keisha still needed to formally end her current job. 3 years of cleaning the Sterling mansion were about to come to an end. When she arrived at the mansion, everything looked different somehow. The grand entrance that once made her feel small now seemed just like any other doorway. The marble floors she had scrubbed countless times were just floors. Marcus greeted her at the staff entrance. "There she is, the famous chef." He gave her a warm hug. "Everyone's talking about you." "It still doesn't feel real," Keisha admitted. "Mr. Sterling is waiting for you in his office," Marcus said, "and he specifically asked that you use the main entrance from now on, not the service door." Keisha nodded and walked around to the front of the house. When she rang the bell, Robert Sterling himself opened the door. "Ms. Williams," he said with a smile. "Please come in." He led her to his office, a room she had cleaned many times but never been invited to enter as a guest. He gestured for her to sit in one of the leather chairs across from his desk. "I assume that's your resignation," he said, nodding at the envelope in her hand. "Yes, sir," Keisha replied, placing it on his desk. "I appreciate the opportunity you've given me, but with everything that's happened—" "Before you continue," Robert interrupted, "I owe you an apology." Keisha looked up in surprise. "For 3 years you worked in my home, and I never took the time to know you," he said. "I never asked about your dreams, your background, or why someone with your talents was cleaning my house. You were my employer, Mr. Sterling. You weren't required to know those things. Perhaps not, but I pride myself on recognizing talent, and I completely missed yours." He paused. "I also need to tell you that I've ended my engagement to Amber." "I'm sorry to hear that," Keisha said politely. Robert shook his head. "Don't be. What I witnessed that night showed me who she truly is. Her attempt to humiliate you, then to sabotage your work, that's not the kind of person I want in my life." The door opened and Emily Chen walked in. "Sorry I'm late," she said, taking the seat next to Keisha. "Traffic on the Bay Bridge was terrible." "Now that we're all here," Robert said, "let's discuss your future, Ms. Williams. Please, call me Keisha." "Keisha," Robert smiled. "James Peterson has offered you funding through his incubator program. I'd like to add to that offer. I want to be an investor in your restaurant. "And I'd like to be your business mentor," Emily added. "Every chef needs someone to handle the business side of things." Keisha looked between them, feeling overwhelmed. This is all happening so fast. "When opportunity knocks, you open the door," Emily said. "You have extraordinary talent, Keisha. All we're doing is helping you share it with the world." "There's something else," Robert said. He opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a folder. "I took the liberty of looking into your mother's medical situation." Keisha stiffened. "That's private." "I apologize for the intrusion, but I wanted to help. There's a new treatment program at UCSF Medical Center that might benefit your mother. I've arranged for a consultation next week if you're interested." Tears welled in Keisha's eyes. For 3 years, she had struggled to get her mother adequate care, and now this man she barely knew was offering help. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "Because I can," Robert said simply, "and because it's the right thing to do." After the meeting, Keisha went straight to the hospital where her mother was having treatment. Gloria Williams was sitting up in bed, looking through a magazine when Keisha entered. "There's my superstar," Gloria said with a weak smile. "I've been telling all the nurses about you." Keisha sat on the edge of the bed and took her mother's hand. "How are you feeling today?" "Better than yesterday," Gloria replied. "The new medication seems to be helping a little." Keisha took a deep breath. "Mom, everything is changing. Mr. Sterling wants to invest in my restaurant, and he's arranged for you to see specialists at UCSF next week." Gloria's eyes widened. "UCSF? But our insurance doesn't cover—" "We don't need to worry about that anymore," Keisha said. "And there's more. James Peterson, the food critic, is giving me $500,000 to start my own restaurant." Gloria squeezed her daughter's hand. "I always knew you were meant for more than cleaning houses." "I couldn't have done any of it without you," Keisha said. "Everything I know about cooking started in your kitchen." "In your grandmother's kitchen," Gloria corrected with a smile. "She'd be so proud of you." Later that afternoon, Keisha met Marcus at a coffee shop near the mansion. He slid a small USB drive across the table to her. "What's this?" she asked. "Evidence," Marcus replied in a low voice. "I've been documenting Amber's behavior for months. The way she treats the staff, the things she says when Mr. Sterling isn't around." "Why would you record that?" Marcus sighed. "After she accused Jose of stealing her bracelet last year, the one she later found in her own jewelry box, I knew we needed protection, so I started keeping evidence." Keisha picked up the drive. "What should I do with this?" "That's up to you," Marcus said. "But people should know who she really is, especially since she still has millions of followers who think she's this kind, perfect person." 2 days later, videos of Amber berating staff, making racist comments, and planning to humiliate Keisha began circulating online. No one knew who leaked them, but the impact was immediate. Amber's followers started unfollowing her by the thousands. Brands canceled their partnerships with her. Her carefully constructed image was crumbling. While Amber dealt with her social media downfall, Keisha met with James Peterson at his office to discuss her restaurant concept. "Tell me your vision," Peterson said as they sat in his sleek downtown office. "I want to call it Homecoming," Keisha explained. "A place that honors both my formal culinary training and my family's soul food traditions. Food that makes people feel welcome, like they've come home." Peterson nodded approvingly. "And the menu?" "Elevated versions of dishes my grandmother taught me, alongside techniques I learned at culinary school. For example, her fried chicken with a sous vide preparation first to ensure perfect texture, or her collard greens with a modern presentation." "I love it," Peterson said. "Authentic but innovative. Now, let me introduce you to some people who will help make this happen." Over the next week, Keisha met with architects, designers, and restaurant consultants. Robert Sterling called to tell her he had found the perfect location. "It's in downtown San Francisco," he explained over the phone. "An old building with character but completely updated inside. I think you'll love it." When she visited the space, Keisha knew immediately it was right. High ceilings, exposed brick walls, and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. "This is perfect," she told Robert as they walked through the empty space. "I can already see where everything would go." "Then it's yours," he said. "Or rather, your restaurant's." As Keisha began planning her restaurant in earnest, she also made another important decision. She called Chef Patterson at the San Francisco Culinary Institute. "I'd like to come back and finish my degree," she told him. "After what I heard about that dinner, you could teach our classes," Chef Patterson replied. "But we'd be honored to have you back as a student. When do you want to start?" "As soon as possible," Keisha said. "I have a lot to learn before opening my own restaurant." "Well, your timing is perfect. The new term starts next Monday." When Keisha mentioned the tuition costs, James Peterson immediately offered to cover it as part of his investment in her future. On her last day at the Sterling Mansion, Keisha went to say goodbye to the staff who had become like family to her. "What will you all do now?" she asked as they gathered in the staff kitchen. "Mr. Sterling is helping us find new positions," the head housekeeper said. "He's been very generous with recommendations." Keisha hesitated, then said, "When my restaurant opens, I'll need staff. Not just in the kitchen, but for the front of house too. If any of you are interested..." Several hands went up immediately. "I'd love to work for you, chef," Tony said with a grin. "Me too," added another staff member. Keisha smiled, still not used to being called chef. As she left the mansion for the last time, she turned for one final look. The place where she had been invisible was now the place where she had been truly seen for the first time. That evening, as she prepared for her first day back at culinary school, her phone buzzed with a text from Robert Sterling. "There's an unexpected issue with the restaurant location. We need to talk tomorrow." Keisha frowned at the message. Just when everything seemed to be falling into place, there was now a complication. She wondered what could have gone wrong with the perfect space they had found. Keisha met Robert Sterling the next morning at the downtown location they had picked for her restaurant. His face was serious as he led her inside. "I'm sorry about the text last night," he said. "I didn't want to worry you, but we have a problem with this space." "What kind of problem?" Keisha asked, looking around at the empty room she had already started to imagine filled with tables and guests. Robert pointed up at the ceiling. "The building inspector found structural issues. The support beams need major repairs, which would delay opening by at least 6 months." Keisha's heart sank. 6 months? That's too long. "I agree," Robert said. "Which is why I want to show you another option. It's not downtown, but I think you might like it even more." They drove to the Mission District, a vibrant neighborhood filled with colorful murals and diverse restaurants. Robert stopped in front of a beautiful brick building with large windows. "This used to be Carter's Soul Food in the 1960s, Robert explained. "It was one of San Francisco's first black-owned restaurants. The owner, Joseph Carter, was a legend in the city until he retired in the 1980s. Keisha stepped inside the empty restaurant space. The high ceilings, exposed brick walls, and warm wooden floors immediately felt right. "It has a history of good food and community," Robert continued. "The owner's granddaughter inherited it and wants to sell to someone who will honor its legacy." Keisha walked through the space already seeing possibilities. "It's perfect," she said. "Better than the downtown location." "I thought you'd say that." Robert smiled. "And the best part? We can start renovations immediately. No structural issues here." The next 6 months passed in a blur of activity. Keisha divided her time between finishing her culinary degree, developing her menu, and overseeing restaurant construction. On a crisp morning in early spring, Keisha sat in Chef Patterson's advanced techniques class, taking notes as he demonstrated a modern plating method. Her phone vibrated silently in her pocket, the 5th message from the contractor that day. After class, Chef Patterson approached her. "You're distracted today, Williams." "I'm sorry, Chef. The restaurant renovations are hitting some snags." He nodded, understanding. Opening a restaurant while finishing culinary school is ambitious, but if anyone can do it, it's you. That afternoon, Keisha met Emily Chen at the restaurant site. Workers were installing the kitchen equipment as Emily examined a spreadsheet on her tablet. "The hood ventilation system is delayed again," Emily said as Keisha walked in. "It won't arrive for another 2 weeks." 2 weeks? Keisha groaned. "That pushes back all our kitchen testing." Emily placed a reassuring hand on Keisha's shoulder. "This is normal. No restaurant opens without delays." "I don't have experience with this part," Keisha admitted. "The cooking I understand, but the business side, that's why I'm here," Emily said, showing Keisha her tablet. "I've created systems for everything: inventory management, staff scheduling, financial tracking. You focus on the food, I'll handle the business." Over the next few weeks, Emily taught Keisha about profit margins, labor costs, and marketing strategies. They sat for hours in the half-finished restaurant, surrounded by construction dust and the sound of power tools. "Your food costs need to stay under 30% of your menu price," Emily explained, "and labor costs ideally under 35%. "So how do I price the menu?" Keisha asked. "Start with your ingredient costs, multiply by 3, then adjust based on what your market will pay." As the restaurant took shape, Keisha hired her kitchen staff. Marcus left his position at Sterling's mansion to become Homecoming's general manager. Tony, the former sous chef who had doubted Keisha that first night, joined as her new sous chef. 3 weeks before opening, Keisha received a call from the hospital. "Ms. Williams, your mother has had a setback," the doctor said. "The new treatment caused some unexpected side effects. We need to adjust her protocol." Keisha rushed to the hospital, finding her mother looking frailer than she had in weeks. "It's just a bump in the road," Gloria insisted, though her voice was weak. "Don't you worry about me." "The restaurant can wait," Keisha said, holding her mother's hand. "Don't you dare put your dreams on hold again," Gloria said firmly. "I'll be fine. This treatment is working, even with the side effects." Keisha spent the night in the hospital chair, making calls to reschedule meetings and tastings. The next morning, she brought her notebook and began developing menu items at her mother's bedside. "What are you working on?" Gloria asked, watching Keisha scribble notes. "Grandma's peach cobbler, but as an elegant plated dessert," Keisha replied. "I want it on the opening menu." Gloria smiled. She would have loved that. As Gloria began to recover from the treatment setback, another problem emerged at the restaurant. 2 weeks before opening, the head server Keisha had hired suddenly quit. "She got an offer from a Michelin-starred restaurant downtown," Marcus explained. "They're paying her twice what we can afford." "We can't open without a head server," Keisha worried. "I know someone," Marcus said. "Lisa worked with me at the Four Seasons before Sterling's. She's amazing with guests and knows fine dining service. I'll call her." While Marcus solved the staffing issue, Keisha faced another challenge. She received a call from the health department. "Ms. Williams, we've received multiple complaints about unsafe food practices at your restaurant," the inspector said. "That's impossible," Keisha replied. "We haven't even started cooking yet. We're still setting up the kitchen. Nevertheless, we're required to investigate all complaints. I'll be there tomorrow morning." After hanging up, Keisha immediately called Emily. "Someone's trying to sabotage us," she explained. "The health department received complaints about a restaurant that hasn't even opened." Emily's voice was calm. "I'll handle this. Just make sure the kitchen is spotless for tomorrow's inspection." The next day, the health inspector found nothing wrong. As he was leaving, he mentioned, "By the way, all the complaints came from the same person, an Amber Collins. Does that name mean anything to you?" Keisha and Emily exchanged knowing looks. "We're familiar with her," Emily said coolly. That evening, Emily showed Keisha several food blogs and social media posts claiming that Homecoming had failed health inspections before even opening. "Amber's been busy," Emily said, "but I have a plan." Emily crafted a social media response, posting pictures of the spotless kitchen, the official health department approval, and a statement about integrity in the restaurant industry. She also contacted food writers she knew, turning the attempted sabotage into a positive story about overcoming obstacles. 2 days later, James Peterson called Keisha. "I've arranged for several influential food critics and bloggers to attend your opening night," he said. "Don't worry, they know it's your first service and will judge accordingly." "That's both wonderful and terrifying," Keisha replied honestly. "You're ready," Peterson assured her. "I've tasted your food. I believe in your vision." A week before the opening, Keisha made a special visit to Sterling's mansion. She brought formal invitations for all the staff who had supported her that fateful night. As she walked through the familiar rooms, memories of her time as a cleaner seemed distant now. Robert Sterling found her in the kitchen, looking at the spot where she had first cooked for his guests. "Feeling nostalgic?" he asked. "Grateful," Keisha corrected. "This is where everything changed." Robert smiled. "I have something for you." He handed her a beautifully wrapped package. Keisha opened it carefully. Inside was a leather-bound book. When she opened the cover, she gasped. It was her grandmother's handwritten recipe book, the tattered collection of index cards and notebook pages she had inherited, now professionally restored and bound. "How did you get this?" she asked, running her fingers over the familiar handwriting. "Your mother helped," Robert explained. "She thought you might want your grandmother's recipes as you open a restaurant that honors her influence." Tears filled Keisha's eyes as she held the book. "Thank you. This means everything to me." The night before opening, Keisha gathered her entire staff in the finished restaurant. The space was beautiful. Warm lighting highlighting the exposed brick walls, comfortable seating arranged to create both intimacy and energy, and a partially open kitchen where guests could glimpse the cooking action. "Tomorrow we open our doors," Keisha told her team. "We'll make mistakes, that's okay. What matters is how we recover from them. Remember why we're here, to create food that makes people feel welcome, that tells my family's story, that honors this building's history." Marcus raised a glass. "To Chef Keisha and homecoming!" As the staff cheered, Keisha felt a moment of pure clarity. This was her dream, finally taking shape. She opened her grandmother's recipe book to the inscription she had written inside the cover, "From your kitchen to mine, the journey continues." Later that night, alone in the restaurant, Keisha walked through the silent dining room. She ran her fingers over her grandmother's restored recipe book and whispered, "We're almost home." Across town, Amber Collins sat in her new small apartment, a far cry from Sterling's mansion. Her social media accounts had lost millions of followers. Brand deals had disappeared. But as she scrolled through news about Homecoming's grand opening, a cold determination filled her eyes. She wasn't finished with Keisha Williams yet. Amber adjusted her dark sunglasses and pulled her hat lower as she slipped out of the taxi in front of Homecoming. The restaurant gleamed in the early morning light, its new sign proudly displaying the name in warm copper letters. She watched from across the street as Keisha unlocked the front door and went inside, preparing for opening night. "It should have been me," Amber muttered, clutching her phone. She scrolled to her contact list and pressed a name. Brian Miller, Health Inspector. Amber had dated him briefly last year before meeting Robert. It was time to call in a favor. Inside Homecoming, Keisha moved through the kitchen with purpose. She had arrived at 5 in the morning to begin preparations for the evening. The kitchen gleamed with new equipment, and the menu was finalized after weeks of testing. Everything was ready. Marcus burst through the door, his face concerned. "Keisha, we have a problem. I just got a tip from my friend at City Hall. Amber made a reservation for tonight under a fake name, and she's bringing health inspectors with her." Keisha placed down the knife she was using. "Are you sure?" "Positive. She's planning to shut us down on opening night." Instead of panicking, Keisha took a deep breath. "Then we'll make sure they find absolutely nothing to complain about. Call the entire staff in 2 hours early. We're going to clean this kitchen again until it sparkles." By noon, the entire restaurant had been scrubbed to perfection. Every surface gleamed, temperatures in all refrigerators were checked twice, and food handling procedures were reviewed with the entire staff. "Health inspectors won't find a single violation," Marcus said, surveying their work. Keisha nodded. "Good. Now let's focus on making this the best opening night possible." At 4 in the afternoon, Tony arrived with a surprise. "Your mother is here." Keisha rushed to the front of the restaurant where Gloria Williams sat in a wheelchair, looking tired but happy. "Mom, what are you doing here? You should be resting," Keisha said, kneeling beside her. Gloria took her daughter's hand. "I wouldn't miss your opening night for anything in the world. The doctors said I could come for a few hours if I used the wheelchair." Tears formed in Keisha's eyes. "I'm so glad you're here." "I want to be near the entrance," Gloria said. "I want to greet people and tell them stories about my little girl who used to stand on a stool to reach the stove." Keisha laughed. "I've reserved the perfect table for you. You'll be able to see everything and talk to everyone who comes in." As evening approached, the staff gathered for a final meeting. Keisha stood before them in her new chef's whites, no longer wearing a cleaner's uniform. "Tonight isn't just the beginning of homecoming," she told them. "It's the continuation of a story that started generations ago in my grandmother's kitchen. Whatever happens, remember that we're creating more than just food here. We're creating a place where people feel welcome." At exactly 5:30 in the evening, Marcus opened the front doors. A line had already formed around the block: celebrities, tech executives, food critics, and regular San Franciscans eager to experience the restaurant everyone was talking about. James Peterson was the first to arrive, earlier than his reservation time. "I wanted to wish you luck before the chaos begins," he told Keisha, shaking her hand, "though I doubt you'll need it." Robert Sterling and Emily Chen arrived next, bringing with them several influential friends from Silicon Valley. "The place looks amazing," Emily said, looking around at the transformed space. "Even better than we imagined." As 6 o'clock approached, the restaurant filled with excited guests. Gloria sat at her special table near the entrance, charming everyone who came in. "My daughter learned to cook standing on a stool in our kitchen," she told a famous tech CEO. "By the time she was 10, she could make a better pie than me." In the kitchen, Keisha moved with calm authority, directing her team as orders began to come in. Each plate that left the kitchen was perfect, her grandmother's recipes elevated with her culinary school techniques. "First course for table 7, she called out. 2 mushroom consommes, 1 crab cake, 1 butter lettuce salad. The kitchen operated like a well-oiled machine. Tony executed Keisha's directions perfectly, and the rest of the staff followed their lead. At 7:15, Marcus caught Keisha's eye through the kitchen window and mouthed, "She's here." Amber walked in, accompanied by 2 official-looking men in suits. She had made an effort to disguise herself with dark glasses and a hat, but Marcus recognized her immediately. "Ms. Collins," he greeted her with professional courtesy, "your table is ready, and I see you've brought guests." "These gentlemen are health inspectors," Amber announced loudly, removing her sunglasses. "They've received several concerning reports about this establishment." The restaurant grew quiet as nearby diners turned to look. Keisha emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "Welcome to homecoming," she said calmly. "We're happy to accommodate a health inspection at any time." One of the inspectors looked uncomfortable. Ms. Collins indicated there were urgent violations that couldn't wait until business hours. "Of course," Keisha nodded. "Marcus, please show these gentlemen to the kitchen. They're welcome to inspect every inch of our operation." As Marcus led the inspectors away, Keisha turned to Amber. "Would you like to be seated? Our butter-poached lobster is excellent tonight." Amber's face flushed with anger. "This isn't over, you know. You stole my life." "No, Amber, you lost your life all by yourself," Keisha replied quietly. "Now, would you like a table or not?" Before Amber could answer, Gloria called from her table. "Is that the young lady from the videos? The one who was so unkind to my daughter?" Amber turned, startled to see Gloria sitting there. "Come here, dear," Gloria said in a tone that somehow made it impossible to refuse. Amber reluctantly approached Gloria's table. "Sit down," Gloria instructed, pointing to the empty chair across from her. To everyone's surprise, Amber sat. "My daughter tells me you tried to humiliate her," Gloria said, "that you thought being a cleaner made her less than you." Amber said nothing. "But look around," Gloria continued, gesturing to the packed restaurant. "All these people are here because of her talent. Not her title, not her money, just her God-given talent and hard work." In the kitchen, the health inspectors were finding nothing amiss. In fact, they seemed impressed. "This is one of the cleanest kitchens I've seen in years," one of them told Marcus. "Everything is perfectly organized and at the correct temperatures." Meanwhile, James Peterson was typing on his phone, posting a real-time review to his widely read blog. "Homecoming isn't just a restaurant opening, it's the birth of an important new culinary voice in San Francisco," he wrote. "Chef Keisha Williams transforms familiar comfort foods into refined experiences without losing their soul. This is the most important restaurant opening in San Francisco in a decade." As his review went live, phones around the restaurant began to buzz as people received notifications. The excitement in the room grew even more. Back at Gloria's table, Amber stood up abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this." "No, you don't," Gloria agreed. "But someday I hope you learn that tearing others down never builds you up." Amber stormed toward the exit just as the health inspectors returned to the dining room. "Ms. Collins," one called after her, "we found no violations whatsoever. In fact, we'll be using this kitchen as an example for other restaurants." Amber pushed past them and out the door. Her final attempt at revenge completely failed. As the evening progressed, Keisha moved between the kitchen and dining room, speaking with guests and ensuring everything ran smoothly. The response to the food was overwhelmingly positive. Near the end of the night, James Peterson stood and tapped his glass with a spoon. The restaurant fell silent. "I think we should acknowledge the extraordinary chef who has created this experience for us tonight," he said. "Chef Keisha Williams, would you join us?" Keisha emerged from the kitchen, her chef's coat showing the evidence of a busy night of cooking. The entire restaurant erupted in applause, guests rising to their feet in a standing ovation. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Keisha said when the applause finally quieted. "This restaurant is a dream I once thought was lost forever. It honors my grandmother's recipes, my mother's encouragement, and the journey that brought me here, both the good parts and the difficult ones." As she spoke, her eyes scanned the crowd of smiling faces. Suddenly, she froze. In the back of the room, partially hidden in the shadows, stood a man she hadn't seen in nearly 10 years, her father, David Williams, who had walked out on the family when she was 15. He was older now, his hair graying at the temples, but unmistakable. As their eyes met across the crowded restaurant, he smiled hesitantly and gave a small wave. Keisha faltered in her speech for just a moment before continuing, her mind racing. What was he doing here? Why now, on this night that should have been perfect? As the applause resumed and Keisha returned to the kitchen, she couldn't help glancing back at the spot where her father stood. The triumph of the evening now mixed with a complicated flood of emotions she wasn't prepared to face. The last guests had left and the kitchen staff was cleaning up when Marcus approached Keisha. "There's someone still waiting outside," he said quietly. "Says he's your father." Keisha froze, knife in hand, halfway through slicing lemons for tomorrow's prep. "Tell him we're closed." "I did. He said he'll wait as long as it takes." Keisha put down the knife and wiped her hands on her apron. The triumph of her successful opening night now felt distant as anxiety took its place. "What does he want after all these years?" she muttered. Gloria, who was still seated at her special table near the entrance, overheard them. "Keisha, come here," she called. Keisha walked over to her mother, kneeling beside her wheelchair. "You saw him too?" Gloria nodded. "I always knew David would reappear someday." Success has a way of bringing people back. I don't want to see him, Keisha said. He left us when we needed him most. Gloria took her daughter's hand. You don't have to see him tonight, but someday you might want answers. Do you want to see him? Keisha asked. Not tonight, Gloria said. Tonight is about celebrating you. Keisha nodded and stood up. Marcus, please tell Mr. Williams I'm not available tonight, but he can call the restaurant tomorrow to schedule a time to talk. After taking Gloria home and making sure she was comfortable, Keisha returned to her own small apartment. Despite her exhaustion, sleep wouldn't come. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications, glowing reviews from food blogs, social media mentions, and reservation requests flooding the restaurant's system. The morning brought more attention. James Peterson's detailed review had been published in the San Francisco Chronicle, calling Homecoming a triumphant arrival on the city's culinary scene. 3 television shows requested interviews, and the reservation system crashed due to overwhelming demand. At 10 in the morning, the phone rang. It was the restaurant's line forwarded to her cell. Homecoming, this is Keisha, she answered. Keisha, it's David, your father. She sat down slowly on the edge of her bed. How did you find me? I saw an article about you in the newspaper a few weeks ago, about how you were opening a restaurant after working as a cleaner for Robert Sterling. I couldn't believe it was my little girl. I stopped being your little girl when you walked out on us, Keisha said. What do you want, David? He sighed. I deserve that. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. What you've accomplished is amazing. Thank you, she said stiffly. Is that all? I was hoping we could meet, talk. I know I have a lot to explain. Keisha closed her eyes. I have a restaurant to run. I don't have time for family reunions. I understand, he said, but I'll be in San Francisco for a while. If you change your mind, I'm staying at the Hotel Carlton. After hanging up, Keisha called Gloria. He wants to meet, she told her mother. Are you going to? Gloria asked. I don't know. Should I? Gloria was quiet for a moment. That's your decision, baby. But remember, forgiveness doesn't mean what he did was okay. It means you're not letting it control you anymore. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Homecoming was booked solid 3 months in advance. Reviews continued to pour in, almost all of them glowing. Keisha hired more staff to keep up with demand. Emily helped Keisha manage her new public profile, coaching her through television interviews and press opportunities. Remember to keep your brand message consistent, Emily advised before Keisha's appearance on a morning show. You're telling a story about family recipes elevated through formal training. The increased workload began to take its toll. Keisha was at the restaurant from early morning until past midnight most days. She was losing weight and constantly looked tired. One particularly busy night, the kitchen was in chaos. A supplier had delivered the wrong cuts of meat, forcing last-minute menu changes. 2 servers called in sick, and the dishwasher broke down. Chef, we're out of the special, Tony called across the kitchen. Then 86 it and offer the duck instead, Keisha replied, trying to focus on the dishes in front of her. As she reached for a hot pan, her sleeve caught on a knife handle. The knife fell, and as she instinctively tried to catch it, the blade sliced across her palm. Chef! Tony rushed over with a clean towel as blood dripped onto the floor. Marcus appeared instantly. What happened? It's nothing, Keisha said through gritted teeth. That's not nothing. You need stitches, Marcus insisted, examining the cut. Tony, you're in charge. I'm taking Chef to the emergency room. I can't leave now, Keisha protested. We're in the middle of service. You trained your team, Marcus said firmly. Trust them to handle it. At the hospital, as a doctor stitched her hand, Keisha's phone buzzed constantly with messages from the restaurant. Stop checking that, Marcus scolded. They'll figure it out. What if they can't? Keisha worried. Then they'll learn, just like you did, Marcus replied. You can't do everything yourself, Keisha. That's how you burn out. The injury forced Keisha to step back from cooking for several days. She had to trust Tony and the rest of her kitchen staff to maintain her standards. To her surprise, they rose to the challenge. "You've trained them well," Robert Sterling observed when he visited the restaurant that week. "They respect you and want to make you proud." Keisha nodded, watching from the pass as Tony expertly plated a dish exactly as she would have. It's hard to let go. "The best leaders know when to step back," Robert said. "By the way, I've been meaning to ask, there's a supplier giving you trouble?" Keisha explained about the meat deliveries that kept coming incorrectly despite multiple complaints. "Let me handle that," Robert offered. "I know the owner of the company." One phone call from Robert Sterling was all it took. The next day, the supplier's owner personally delivered the correct order with an apology. Emily continued to help Keisha develop systems to maintain quality while managing the restaurant's growth. "You need to document everything," Emily explained, showing Keisha the operational handbook she'd created. "Every recipe, every procedure, every standard. That way your vision stays consistent even when you're not physically doing everything." With her injured hand healing and her team proving themselves capable, Keisha finally found time to look for a better apartment for her mother. Gloria's health had improved enough that she only used the wheelchair occasionally now, and her doctors were cautiously optimistic about her progress. "What do you think of this one?" Keisha asked, showing Gloria pictures of a ground-floor apartment near the restaurant. "It's beautiful," Gloria said. "But can you afford this?" Keisha smiled. "Mom, the restaurant is doing really well. I can afford to take care of you now." 2 months after opening night, Keisha received a phone call that left her speechless. The representative from the Michelin Guide informed her that Homecoming was being considered for a star, an honor rarely given to new restaurants. "The inspectors will be visiting anonymously in the coming weeks," the woman explained. "This is highly confidential information." After hanging up, Keisha sat alone in her office, overwhelmed by what this could mean. A Michelin star would cement Homecoming's place in the culinary world. That evening, as she was sharing the news with her mother in their new apartment, Gloria brought up a subject Keisha had been avoiding. "Have you spoken to your father yet?" Gloria asked. Keisha shook her head. "I've been too busy." "He called me yesterday," Gloria said. "Asked about my health, about you." "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that you're doing wonderfully and I'm getting better." Gloria paused. "He seems genuinely sorry, Keisha." "Sorry doesn't make up for 10 years of absence," Keisha said. "No, it doesn't," Gloria agreed. "But people can change. I'm not saying trust him immediately. Just consider hearing what he has to say." Keisha was silent for a long moment. "Would you be upset if I invited him to the restaurant? If Homecoming gets a Michelin star, we'll have a celebration." Gloria smiled. "I think that would be a good first step." Later that night, Keisha finally sent a text message to the number her father had given her. "If you're still in town, I'd like to meet for coffee next week." His response came immediately. "Name the time and place. I'll be there. Thank you, Keisha." As she left the restaurant that night, exhausted but satisfied with another successful service, Keisha noticed a figure standing in the shadows across the street. The streetlight revealed blonde hair and a face that, despite being thinner and less polished than before, was unmistakable. Amber Collins stood watching the restaurant, her expression unreadable in the dim light. When she noticed Keisha looking at her, she didn't run or hide. Instead, she slowly walked toward the restaurant. Keisha tensed, ready for another confrontation. But as Amber came closer, Keisha could see that her designer clothes had been replaced with simple jeans and a worn sweater. Her perfect makeup was gone and her eyes lacked their former cold confidence. "I need to talk to you," Amber said, her voice lacking its usual sharpness. "About what?" Keisha asked warily. Amber looked down at the sidewalk, then back up at Keisha. "I need a job. Any job. I've tried everywhere else." Keisha stared at Amber in disbelief. The woman who had tried to humiliate her, who had attempted to sabotage her restaurant, was now asking her for help. "You want a job? From me?" Keisha couldn't hide her surprise. Amber nodded, her eyes downcast. No one will hire me. The videos of how I treated staff at Robert's house are everywhere. I've lost everything, my followers, my brand deals, my apartment. I'm staying in a motel that charges by the week. Keisha studied the woman standing before her. Amber's designer clothes were gone, replaced by worn jeans and a faded sweater. Her hair, once perfectly styled, now hung limply around her face. "Why should I help you?" Keisha asked. "You tried to humiliate me. You sabotaged my food. You filed false reports with the health department." "I know," Amber said quietly. "I was terrible to you. I don't deserve your help." She looked up, meeting Keisha's eyes. "But I have nowhere else to go." Keisha was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Come back tomorrow at 10 in the morning. We'll talk." Amber nodded gratefully. "Thank you." Inside the restaurant, Marcus was finishing the closing procedures. "Was that who I think it was?" he asked, having watched the exchange through the window. "Yes," Keisha replied. "She wants a job." Marcus's eyes widened. "You're not actually considering it?" "I don't know," Keisha admitted. "What would you do?" "After everything she did to you, I'd tell her to get lost," Marcus said firmly. Keisha nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe, but I remember what it's like to need a second chance." 1 year later, homecoming was packed for a special celebration dinner. A banner hung above the entrance. 1-year anniversary and Michelin star celebration. The restaurant had been transformed from Keisha's dream into a San Francisco institution. The Michelin star, awarded 6 months after opening, had brought international attention. Gloria Williams, now in remission, sat at her regular table near the entrance. She no longer needed a wheelchair and had become a beloved fixture at the restaurant, greeting guests and sharing stories about Keisha's childhood. "My daughter used to wake up at 5 in the morning just to help me make breakfast," she told a young couple seated nearby. Even then, she had such a talent for flavors. In the kitchen, Keisha moved with calm confidence, directing her expanded staff as they prepared for the special evening. Tony had grown into an exceptional sous chef, perfectly executing Keisha's vision even when she wasn't present. "The governor's table is ready for the first course," he reported. "Perfect," Keisha nodded. "Let's make sure the timing is exact for the soufflés. We have 70 people ordering them tonight." At the bar, a young woman with blonde hair efficiently mixed drinks and managed the wine service. Amber Collins was nearly unrecognizable from the influencer who had once sneered at The Help. She wore a simple black uniform and worked with focused determination. Keisha's decision to hire Amber had shocked everyone, especially Marcus. She had started Amber as a dishwasher, the lowest position in the restaurant. For 3 months, Amber had scrubbed pots without complaint, slowly earning the right to train as a server, then a bartender. "Table 12 needs another bottle of the Cabernet," Amber told the sommelier as she arranged glasses on her tray. The front door opened and David Williams entered, looking nervous in his new suit. In the past year, Keisha had cautiously rebuilt a relationship with her father. Their weekly coffee meetings had gradually evolved into family dinners with Gloria, where they slowly addressed the pain of his abandonment. "Dad," Keisha greeted him, emerging briefly from the kitchen. "Mom's at her table. I saved you a seat with her." "Thanks, sweetheart," he said, still careful with his words around her. "Everything looks amazing." "The ceremony will start at 8, Keisha reminded him before returning to the kitchen. Robert Sterling arrived with Emily Chen. They had become more than business partners in the past year, their relationship evolving into a romance that surprised everyone, including themselves. "The place is incredible," Emily said, looking around at the packed restaurant. "And to think we're breaking ground on the second location next month." Robert nodded. "Keisha has accomplished more in 1 year than most chefs do in a decade." James Peterson, now a regular at homecoming, waved them over to join his table. "The food critics' table has room for a tech genius and his brilliant partner," he said with a smile. As 8 o'clock approached, Marcus called for attention. The restaurant fell silent as Keisha emerged from the kitchen in her chef's whites, which now bore the Michelin star embroidered on the sleeve. 1 year ago today, Marcus began, a cleaner was forced to cook dinner for 100 of San Francisco's elite. That night changed everything, not just for Keisha, but for all of us who have been part of this journey. Keisha stepped forward. Thank you all for coming tonight. This past year has been extraordinary beyond anything I could have imagined. She looked around the room, her eyes finding her mother, her father, Robert, Emily, James, and finally Amber at the bar. Homecoming was built on the idea that food connects us to our past while moving us forward. It's about second chances and new beginnings. She smiled, which is why I'm proud to announce the Homecoming Scholarship Program for aspiring chefs from disadvantaged backgrounds. Applause filled the room as Keisha continued, starting next month, we'll select 4 students each year to receive full culinary school tuition, plus paid apprenticeships here at Homecoming. Robert stood and raised his glass. To Keisha Williams, who reminds us that talent and character will always overcome prejudice and cruelty. The room erupted in cheers. Gloria wiped tears from her eyes as David placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. After the speeches, a film crew set up in the kitchen. They had been documenting Keisha's journey for a television special, and tonight they were filming the final segment. Can you tell us what this Michelin star means to you? The director asked as Keisha prepared a special dessert for the camera. It's validation, Keisha replied, carefully plating her grandmother's peach cobbler, now reimagined as an elegant dessert. Not just for me, but for every person who has had to put their dreams on hold because life got in the way. Later that evening, as the celebration continued, Keisha found a moment to step outside for fresh air. Amber followed her out. I never properly thanked you, Amber said quietly. For what? Keisha asked. For the job, for the second chance, for not being like me. Amber looked down at her hands that now worked hard every day. I was awful to you. I tried to destroy you, and instead of getting revenge, you helped me. Keisha shrugged. Everyone deserves a chance to be better than they were. I received an offer from a restaurant in Seattle, Amber continued. A management position. I wanted to tell you before I decided. You should take it, Keisha said without hesitation. You've learned everything you can here. It's time for you to move forward too. Amber nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you. The next morning, despite the late celebration, Keisha arrived at the community center in Oakland at 8 o'clock sharp. She had started a weekly cooking class for underprivileged youth, teaching the basics of cooking to children who reminded her of herself as a young girl. Today, we're learning how to make the perfect omelet, she told the 12 children gathered around the kitchen station. An omelet was the first thing my grandmother taught me to cook. The children watched with rapt attention as Keisha demonstrated the technique. When it was their turn to try, she moved between their stations, offering guidance and encouragement. One young girl, about 10 years old with bright, curious eyes, struggled with flipping her omelet. Keisha gently guided her hands. Don't worry if it breaks, Keisha reassured her. My first 50 omelets were disasters. The girl giggled. But you have a fancy restaurant now, and a star. Yes, but I started exactly where you are, learning the basics in a simple kitchen with someone who believed in me. As the class ended and the children proudly displayed their creations, the young girl stayed behind. She looked up at Keisha with serious eyes. Ms. Williams, do you think someone like me could ever become a chef like you? Keisha knelt down to meet the girl at eye level. What's your name? Maya, the girl replied. Maya, listen to me. The kitchen doesn't care where you came from, only what you bring to the table. Your passion, your hard work, your willingness to learn, that's what matters. Maya's face brightened. My grandma says I have good hands for cooking. Grandmothers know these things, Keisha smiled. Mine knew I was a chef before I did. After Maya left, Keisha packed up her teaching supplies. Her phone buzzed with a message from Emily about the plans for homecoming's second location. Another message showed a photo of her mother and father having breakfast together, something that would have seemed impossible a year ago. As Keisha walked through the community center, she passed a janitor mopping the floor. The woman nodded respectfully, and Keisha stopped. "That smells good," Keisha said, noticing the scent of lemon oil in the cleaning solution. The woman looked up, surprised to be acknowledged. "Thank you. I make it myself. Works better than the stuff they provide." "I used to be a cleaner," Keisha told her, "for 3 years." "Really? Before you became a famous chef?" The woman seemed shocked. Keisha nodded. "There's dignity in all work done well. Sometimes the path to where you're meant to be takes unexpected turns." Outside, the sun shone brightly on Oakland, the city where Keisha had grown up, where her grandmother had first taught her to cook, where her journey had begun. She looked up at the clear blue sky and whispered words her grandmother had often said, "The most important ingredient is always love." Then she walked toward her car, ready for another day at homecoming, where her past and future had found harmony at last. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen